Thank you, Udit, for coming on today's episode of Mera Pehla Crore. And I'm really excited to have you here. You've done a lot of things that I would really like to learn more about, like exiting a successful startup, building and scaling a startup, a community startup that to $5 million of worth in sales, and another product, like sales outreach one, and then you're building like TinyCheque and very cool products with it along the way. So really had to have to. I'm really glad to have you here on board with us. And if you could introduce yourself for our audience and who is Udit Goenka, that would be a good place to start, I think.
Thank you so much, Osama, for having me to your podcast. It's an absolute pleasure. I would say Udit Goenka in a very simple terms is I'm a very simple guy who absolutely loves building tech and selling tech, right? I call myself as a growth marketer now, started my journey very young as a developer and then transitioned into marketing and sales. So yeah, I just enjoy what I do.
Right. I think you're someone who could be called a serial entrepreneur from the beginning because you've always started and exited and then built something new. And I think you're every living entrepreneur's dream. Like I would consider myself as one as well, but like very less like successful than compared to your journey. But I still like to like play my hand at starting up and figuring out new products to work on.
I think being a Marwadi, I was always taught to just start something on my own right from the very beginning, right? And I come from an entrepreneurial family, so everyone in my mom's side's family is doing some sort of a business. Everyone in my dad's family, they are doing business. Earlier, we everyone used to call it business. Now it's just called as an entrepreneurship journey or a startup, whatever you want to call, right?
Right.
Uh, yeah, that's the kind of background I come from. So it was very natural for me to just start something of my own because doing a job was not really taught, right? Like to take
Yeah.
orders, primarily because we've been just built and taught to build something, right? Because that gives you
Yeah.
a flexibility of making decision. And at the end of the day, the biggest reason why you start a business is not because you want to make a lot of money, is because you want to solve a problem to begin with, and more importantly, you need a freedom to make decisions, right? So when
Yeah.
you start your own journey, you get to have that freedom to make those decisions, and I think that's probably the reason why I started what I started.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it's not talked about a lot, but I think I've seen that around myself as well because my I have a lot of businesses in my family as well. My father had a business, like not very glorified businesses, like a printing press or a stationery shop or things like this. And like having a job wasn't considered at least very good in those people or that generation's eyes. They were like having something of your own is better even at a smaller scale than going and working for somebody. It's the new generation who has normalized having jobs, I believe. That's a transition that I've noticed for at least myself and my perspective. Uh, what do you think about that? And do you think that still there used to be taboo around the jobs?
So jobs were never taboo, right? It's just that starting something requires capital. It's not easy to start something of
Yeah,
your own. And let's say if you're building a tech company, you still require some capital if you are looking to build the tech, if you're not a developer. And if you're a developer, then you'll probably be spending a lot of your time, right?
yeah,
Which means that you need to have at least 12 months worth of capital as a potential
yeah,
runway just to kind of like survive, right? And with entrepreneurship, you will probably not see any money or you will not make any money for the first 3 years. Most of the founders generally they start taking salary after 2 years or after 3 years, something like
yeah,
that, right? So entrepreneurship is not easy. So I think a lot of people also choose jobs because of lack of resources, not just the mindset, but they just lack resources because of
true.
responsibility. By the time
Yeah,
you probably enter your 25, 26, 30, you're looking to get married at the same time, and there are responsibilities that come in, right, where
yeah,
you have to take care of your family, you have to take care of your immediate family, you have to worry about your future expenses, you have to worry about your kids,
yep,
future kids, all of those things, right? So I
yeah,
think that's where it restricts and limits a lot of people to kind of like get into entrepreneurship. And I think from what also I've seen is that a lot of people lack patience because entrepreneurship really requires a lot of patience,
yeah,
and it tests your patience on a daily basis. And for many people, they don't want that. They want the
yeah,
check to be created on the first week of every month,
yeah,
and plan out their life accordingly. And there is nothing wrong with that, right? So whether you do a job or whether you pick entrepreneurship, neither of them are wrong. It just depends upon how big of your dream is at the end of the day and what you are really good at. If you're really good at
Yeah,
something, then start something of your own. If you think that you require a lot of experience before starting something of your own, get a job
yeah,
for about 10-15 years, and once you really master that one or two key skills of
yeah,
problem solving in a certain area, then you can probably start something of your own, right? So I think it really comes down and boils down to your preferences, your choices, your
hundred
responsibilities.
percent.
Of things needs to look into before making any kind of decision.
100%. I completely agree with. Just yesterday, I was like interviewing Dr. Anirudh Malpani, who runs Malpani Ventures and has a IVF clinic as well. And we were talking about the same thing that people should conduct more differential diagnosis for their own lives and choose accordingly rather than following a straight path that they think that might work for them. So,
Mhm.
understanding and assessing your own options, your own choices is much more crucial than anything else. And I completely agree with that. But I believe you went to VivTech, right? You
Sorry.
you went to you did your engineering from VivTech, Vivekan Vivekanand Institute.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Vivekananda Institute. Yeah. So I was doing my
Yeah,
master's over there, and after my first year, I dropped out. In fact, I have it written
yeah,
on LinkedIn very clearly that
yeah,
after my first year, I was already building a startup back then, and my startup just blew like crazy in the first 6 months itself. And the kind of education that I wanted, I wasn't getting that quality of education, which was one of the major reasons why I decided to just like drop out after my first year and then just pursue my dream. So I flew down to US and started building my first startup and continued building my first startup over there.
yeah. So, what was your first startup like? I think it was a PBN hosting platform.
No, it was actually a cloud clusters that we were building for SaaS and VPN companies. That's how I was exposed to the entire industry of SaaS.
Okay. And when was this? 2012,
I think it was
13?
10, 11, something like that.
Okay. So you were before this, like right after recession, before the startup bubble started blowing up in India, you were exposed to that environment.
Yeah, correct. So I think it was probably 10 or 11, something like that, around those years is when
Yeah.
I decided to like just get started with it.
So what was it exactly? How did you help the companies with your product?
So we built our cloud clusters. It was not a product, but it was more of an offering, a service like what AWS offers. So what we
Okay.
were doing was, let's say if you have a SaaS company and you have a SaaS product, you require a very different infrastructure as compared to the regular server, right? Because of the
Yeah.
scalability. So you end up building RAID and you end up building an entire cloud clusters. So at that stage, we were building those for the companies. So we had our own funds, we used our own funds. We would set up the entire clusters for such companies at our data center that we co-located at. So we had we I think we had our servers in four different locations. One was Los Angeles, second was Dallas, third was New Jersey, and fourth was Amsterdam. So we just scattered across all the servers in these locations, and then we were just building clusters for SaaS and VPN companies. So, like I said, this is how I was exposed to SaaS, and I was very intrigued about the whole SaaS industry, which is what eventually like led me to get into SaaS
Yeah.
industry.
But you were selling the shovels and a gold rush at that point of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the key things that has been a very critical part of my life has been that I have been at the right place at the right time, and I have exited from something at the right time as well, which is one of the major reasons why I've been able to like just generate the kind of revenue and wealth for myself so far. Whatever I've done, whatever I've created so far, I think it's primarily because of those exits. Earlier, many of those things weren't timed. I saw people reading about it, so I just built it. Then I saw that, okay, that's actually known as research, right? Because you're not taught all
Yeah.
of these, right? So I also feel that many a times luck is not created. You need to create your own luck.
Yeah.
And that luck can purely be created by just being there at the right place, right?
Yeah.
And just executing. After execution, if things don't work out for you, probably luck is not in favor with you. But then if you time it right, which is probably like research, there's a big chance of you succeeding, right? And this is where
Yeah.
when I started with my SaaS marketplace as well, that was a perfect time. And now when I'm starting with TinyCheque as well, it's an absolute perfect time. And then we launched our first product, Niyam.ai, which is where we knew 6 months ago that legal tech is gonna just like blow up in India. So again, Niyam coming in at the right time. So it's very, very important that you do that market research and create your own luck.
Yeah, I completely agree and could not agree more on that part. I think luck is also overrated, but it's also underrated. Like it has to be balanced that way. Like you said, you have to create it, but you also have to find it. And but having said that, like when you got your first exit from the hosting company, did that make you financially free?
So I was actually financially free even before that. I think I was probably like 17, 18 when I built my very first product. It was in the WordPress security space. And that product just blew up because people were getting hacked left, right, and center. And this was the initial days of WordPress, right?
Right.
And that's when I was financially free. I think in just a month and a half or something, I ended up making and doing about $150,000 in sales during
Okay.
that. And I became financially free at that age itself. So I think I was just 17, 18. And then I utilized a lot of those funds for our servers in the next venture. Right. I got my first property as well. So a lot of those things happened because of that. And yeah, and I think ever since then, like I've just been building my own life independently.
That's great, but you got like I don't think you hear these stories every day that you got financially free at the age
I
of
think
17, 18.
I think it was sure luck, right? I think that is something that I would call luck because
Yeah.
I saw people having problems. So I think one of the nags that I have as a founder is constantly researching and reading, right? I would spend at least 1 hour every day on Reddit, for an example. I would just read. I would go and read people's problem. What are people suffering from? So that I am like intrigued about what kind of problems that can be solved. Then I also look and research about new solutions that other people
Yeah.
are building up constantly, right? So 2 hours every single day goes into just researching, reading,
Yeah.
researching, and learning about consumers and businesses. Because if you cannot understand the problem and behavioral problem, you cannot build a solution. And like I said, keep I think a lot of success has to be data driven today. And with so many tools out there, doing research becomes a lot more easier as compared to what it
Yeah.
used, right? So that's how it all got started in that sense.
I completely agree. I keep doing this on my own as well because I run a marketing agency and I love researching. I love finding new areas or growth levers that you could leverage to for anyone to grow. Like, and I just keep them from myself, and I keep sharing it with my friends and acquaintances whosoever I speak with because किसी के और के काम आ जाए. Like, I don't care, but as long as it works, it gives me a high, and I really like things that work out in this spectrum. But having said that, you built Pitchground, right, around 2018, which is a community of over 200,000 people as of today. So, how did you build? Like, because a lot of people try building a community. A, they're not able to build it successfully. They're not able to get the right people. Either they get a lot of fluff audience, or they don't get enough traction. B, how are you able to monetize the community after building it?
I think one of the biggest mistake that most people make generally is when you're building a community. If you're building a community just to sell a community, then that's not going to work out, right? That's a big problem.
Right.
Second, if you're building a community and if you don't have a purpose, your community is not going to succeed, right? And third, which is I think the most important, is you need to also have the right product in place to also build a community. Because if you're not
Okay.
solving problem, no one is interested in joining your community at that stage. So I
Yeah.
think that's where Pitchground effectively did that because what we did was we built a community of small businesses who are looking to buy softwares, but they did not have enough budget. At the same time, SaaS companies and early stage SaaS companies typically who are looking for such audiences. So we try to like do that matchmaking thing. And that's where like any marketplace is born, right? So we were able to identify these two things, and that is what led to these things, right? So again, it's very, very important to understand, like, and then also at the same time, you don't need community to sell, by the way. You can just grow your business because community doesn't guarantee you sales either. So you as a business need to understand that community is not what will drive sales. It's at the end of the day, it's how good of a storyteller you are, and then how good of a product you have to retain them. So if you are a great storyteller, if you're a great marketer, you'll probably get them to like try your product. But if your product sucks, then there's a big chance that you might not retain them, right? So a lot of thing comes into picture. Building community has got its own pros, but also gets its own cons, because if anything goes wrong, the effect is almost 10x multiplied, right?
Okay.
So the sentiment can go from positive to positive in just few days,
Yeah.
right? So this is why it's very, very important that whenever you're building community, look into every aspect of the things before you build a community. But like I said, just focus on those 3 points critically, and there's a big chance that you might be able to build a community successfully over a period of time.
Right. But from what I've heard and read about Pitchground, did you not think of building it as a competition to G2 or Product Hunt, like at a much larger scale, or
No,
Indie Hacker?
because no, because none of them are actually making enough money, right? So, for example, if we talk about the first platform that you have mentioned, it's just a review platform and a lead generation platform. Lead generation doesn't guarantee you numbers, right? If we talk about the second platform that you have mentioned, it's just a simple launch pad. It again doesn't guarantee you any sales, right? But with our marketplace, it guarantees you sales, right?
Okay.
There is a big difference because out of every 100 SaaS that's being created, 88 are built by developers.
Right.
So they don't understand marketing, they don't understand sales, they have probably never used Facebook ads account in their life. They have probably never used Google Ads account in their life, and they feel that the moment they have built a platform, magically they have built a unicorn, right? The
Yeah.
moment they start ads, they are like, oh my God, my solution is going to be used by everyone. It doesn't work that way,
Yeah.
right? In reality.
Yeah.
And that's where the problem really comes in, and that is the exact same problem statement that we were trying to solve with Pitchground.
So how did you get your traffic? Like, did you run ads for your platform so that you could help your community of
So I
sellers?
already had a good amount of audience that was previously built from my previous uh, like journey, from my previous companies and previous startups that I had built, and I was able to just use that previous customer as a traction for the current one, and that worked out great for me.
All right. And but you also ventured, like along with Pitchground, you also ventured into a sales outreach platform, an email, cold email, uh,
Yeah, first
like
sales
tool.
bio.
Yeah, firstsales.io. So, and you were like, it initially failed apparently, and then you were able to scale it to 500K dollars per month, in 5 months.
Yeah, so when I started with first sales, originally it was back in I think 2017 and
Okay.
16, 17. It failed very miserably, and that's what led me to build Pitchground, right?
Okay.
And then I ended up rebuilding for sales. So it was like that transition of one by one by one, right? Like that's how it
Yeah.
went by.
But like, how did you make like $500,000 in 5 months? Like, what were you doing so wrong?
I just did outreaching. It's an outreaching tool. So you just reach out to users and tell them how effective the tool is in terms of helping you get more leads. Simple.
Right. But okay, so I've spoken to a lot of marketers also and a lot of like founders also. Like not many people have been able to answer this question, but since you built this tool, I would like to understand from you how effective do you think cold emailing is and what is the right way of doing it?
It works and it will continue to work. The first communication channel that was established in the world after internet was email, and it will continue to work. You sign up for an Apple account, or you buy a new iPhone or a new Android phone, and the first thing it asks you is email, not your phone
Yeah,
number, right? And most likely the email that you created several years ago, you're still using them, right? So email still remains the most effective way, and will continue to remain the most effective way, because that's one channel that is being established and incorporated since decades, right? It's kind of like today, almost the entire India runs on WhatsApp. So
yeah,
even if you launch another new or WhatsApp alternative, it will not work,
yeah,
right? Because
yeah,
entire ecosystem. So it's the same way, right? That email has got its own ecosystem, and it's deeply integrated with each sign up, whatever you use in life, right? Any electronic devices that you use, it's all connected over there. The problem is that people think that, oh, I'm gonna just like spam and send out a bunch of emails and I'm gonna get conversions. The problem is the approach that people take, right? I would say like 99.9% of the people don't even know how to write an effective email, right? That's the biggest problem. That's the
Yeah,
ultimate. So I've seen emails where it will be large essays, right? They would write the entire history, vision, mission of
yeah,
company, and I'm like, why are you telling me all of these things, right?
yeah.
Um, the
That
most
too in the first email.
Yeah, the most effective emails are the most simple emails, right? I've seen people sending HTML emails with like crazy designs. Don't do any of those things. Just keep it simple, which is text, right? Don't use anything else, because I don't even use tracking for the first email, by the way, because you
Yeah,
need to ensure that people read. Forget about whether they've opened or not, right? It
yeah,
doesn't matter. If they like what you have written, they would reply, and that's what matters,
exactly.
right? It doesn't matter how many people have opened your email and all of those things, right? All of those metrics, I feel, are a pure jargon. Like I
Yeah,
said, the only metrics that matters is reply, and after that, how many people ended up clicking on a link to schedule a call with you. That's it. Nothing else matters when it comes to cold email. And when you're sending your first email, keep it just 2 lines. For example, um, if I were to like reach out, I would probably say, "Hey Udit, I run a podcast with over 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. Would you like to come up on my podcast and have an extended reach for your company?" Done. That's it. I'm
yeah,
not gonna say I am Osama. I do this. I do that. I'm not gonna say this. My first line, and that is the only outreach I will do. I will not write
yeah.
anything else. And trust me, that 6 second is what it will take me to read that, and that's good enough for me to reply. Like I
I
said,
completely
keep
agree.
it simple, engage with people, keep it conversational, right? Just like how you would have a conversation with someone, keep it
Yeah.
conversational. And the moment you start taking such approaches, trust me, it will start working very, very, very effectively.
Yeah. I completely agree. This is what I tell a lot of people around me as well, that people treat LinkedIn also as a place of cold messaging and like reaching out to people, but they look at it as a professional office space when it should be treated as a after like business conference after party sort of thing where you're meeting people over drinks and dinner, and you can have much more casual conversations and much more freely, but you don't need to pitch yourself entirely, that you don't need to stand in attention with the suit and tie and be like, oh, I'm Osama here and I run a podcast, it's and so episode and so many subscribers. This is not needed. Hi, I run a podcast, would you be interested in joining me? I think that's
That's
a good
that's
enough
all.
icebreaker.
That is all that is required to start a conversation, right? If someone is interested,
Exactly.
they will reply to you. I also see people
Exactly.
using the same templates over and over again, right?
Yeah.
While templates are okay, but again, like I said, keep it just 1 or 2 line. That's it. I
Yeah.
prefer 1 line. I don't even care about introducing myself. I just talk about, look, this is the value I
Yeah.
can give. If you're
Yeah.
interested, let me. That's it. That's all. That's the cold email template you should be using for the rest of your life. Right? Don't use OpenAI. You don't need any of those things.
Yeah.
You don't need any kind of personalization. No one
Yeah.
cares about personalization,
Yeah.
right? Just say the value you can give me. That's all. If
Yeah.
you can show me that value in just one sentence, I will reply to you.
Exactly. And if you like, if you don't have that value, to work on finding that value first. And but like to solve that chicken and egg problem, you have a good email. Like you just inform people that this is how you can write a good email. Where do you get the good emails from? Like, how do you generate a good email list?
So again, are you talking about outbound efforts?
Hmm.
Are you talking about inbound efforts? What are you referring to?
I'm talking about outbound efforts, cold emailing.
Outbound, again, there are a ton of platforms available today to give you emails, right? You can just Google and you'll find a ton and ton and ton of platforms. So I'm not going to name any specific platform, but again, like I said, there are so many platforms available. So getting someone's email today is probably the easiest thing. There are simple hacks as well. Let's say that a lot of people leave their emails on their LinkedIn account and their Instagram account. So if you just even write something like site colon, let's say
Yeah.
Instagram plus doctor plus at the rate email or at the rate, or a lot of ways, right? You will see like hundreds and thousands of potential email of people. But then again, you can again send out emails to them, but again, there's no guarantee that they are actually using it, they're not using it, right? So
Yeah.
make sure that you reach out in the most effective manner to people. And I think that's all that's required.
Is buying an email list worth it in your experience? Have you ever bought it and it worked
It
out?
depends on the platform you're buying from,
Okay.
right?
So
As long as there
have,
is a, as long as those platforms are doing a port 25 check, I think that's pretty good.
okay. So like, has it worked out for you in the past? Have you
Oh,
bought an
absolutely.
email list?
It does. It does. Again, like I said, it depends on the quality of the list and quality of the platform that you're buying from. So quality does comes at a cost. So if some platform is just like storing a bunch of emails that has nothing to do, then it will not work.
Makes sense.
Just make
Like,
sure that you
but
clean your list before you send out any kind of emails.
I completely agree with that. But you've also like acted as an angel investor in 30 plus startups. So could you like what is the coolest startup that first of all, how did you venture into angel investment first before you started your own VC fund, which is TinyCheque? And it's a venture studio, I know, but you still invest in people. So how did you venture into angel investing? Uh, and what are some good cool startups that you invested in? If you can share those with us.
Sure. So I think in 2020, when there was a rush of raising capital, I think Pitchground had already done over $1 million and in revenue. And I reached out to a bunch of VCs. They all said no to me, right? Like I reached out to I think almost 31 or 32 VCs and investors. They all said no, and I was like, I've built a profitable startup. Why is no one interested in investing in me, right? And That's when I wanted to deep dive into understanding this entire industry and build a network of it. And that's when I started my angel investment journey. So what effectively I did was I did a little different game altogether over here, where obviously I'm not going to wait for 5, 7, 10 years to make a return, right? I'm a founder myself, right? If I'm going to get 3x return, I'm not going to wait 10 years like for that return. So
Yeah,
effectively, what I did was I started using these checks as GTM, as a very, very effective way of go to market, where now when I would put a check, I know which are the other angels in that particular cap table. So I was able to network with them. Now at
yeah,
various networking events, right, when we met, we had a great icebreaker. That helped me to build a further community and then built an entire angels network community. I was able to tap into that entire like 0.01% network
yeah.
effectively because of that. So yeah, large part of that started going into that, and then I started getting a lot of leads. A lot of them were also slowly and steadily converting into a paid customer. So I effectively like made my money back into angel investment that I did in less than 6 months of time. Right now,
Oh, that's great.
any return that I get is just a bonus, right? So I think
Yeah.
it really depends upon your strategies and how and things. So yeah, so that's how I effectively used it. So GTM was the primary reason why I started angel investment, but more importantly, I was able to really tap into network. And I think if I wouldn't have done that, raising capital at TinyCheque would have been very difficult. So when we closed our pre-seed round in the month of May, I think a large part of it was because I had built a very good network already
Yeah.
that kind of like helped me to tap into and raise that capital. So that's when I realized networking is everything at the end of the day.
100%. And that is what has changed my life personally in the last 3 years. Otherwise, I was struggling a lot. I don't have any credentials to show for myself. I am a high school dropout, like you are a college dropout yourself. And since I did not go to any college or anything like that and didn't come from wealth, so I did not have any network to fall back on of any kind. So I had to build my way from ground up and from scratch. And now, Alhamdulillah, I'm in a position where I can probably count on some people to help me out, at least, if not a lot. But I completely agree. And I think networking as a skill should be taught. Not many people know how to network. They just know the importance of networking. People keep jargoning about networking. They don't know how to network. There's no actionable steps. Step one is this, step two is this, and step three is this. And you are able to do it because you have had so much experience building your previous startups, I believe. So you were able to treat angel investing as a business, and then you were using terms like GTM for angel investing, which I think is very good clarity of thought. But having said that, what are some cool startups that you've invested in so far?
I think one of the very cool startup that I think a lot of people in the ecosystem knows is growthschool.io. That was
Yeah.
so that was one of the checks that I had given to. I had recently invested in a startup known as Galaxy. They're building a
Okay.
defense tech startup. So there was another place where I had invested in. Axam is another great startup. It's a supply chain as a service platform. They are doing extremely, extremely well. They're no longer a startup because of their revenue, technically.
Okay.
Uh, so they've grown massively as well. So that's another one. So yeah, so I have invested in some very, very good startups. And mostly likely, I generally look into companies that are solving distribution problem, be it like supply chain or online, doesn't matter. I think because I understand the value of distribution as I've built a distribution system
Yeah.
in distribution is key. And I think that's where a lot of my keen interest has been generally when it comes to any sort of investments.
I completely agree. But on the subject of angels investing, what is the average ticket size of angel investing usually like for
It really,
angel?
it really depends on the startup. It really depends on the network. It depends on various factors. So there is no set numbers altogether.
So what is the average ticket size? What had been the average ticket
It
size for you?
doesn't matter. Like I said, there is no average ticket size, right? Because for some startups, it's 50 lakhs, some startups, it's 1 crore. So for some startup, it's even 5 lakh. It really depends. So there is no average ticket size when it comes to angel investments. It also depends on the stage of the company. Right. The earlier the stage of the company, the smaller could be the check size. But then again, smaller word is again a very vague term depending on the startup. So there is no set numbers altogether at any given point.
All right. So what is something that entrepreneurs should keep in mind while approaching angel investors such as yourself? What is like what are some things that they should really have clarity on before even thinking of getting angel investment, let alone VC investment?
Build your network. It's very important. Nothing else matters because when you're trying to raise your first checks, people don't care about your idea. People don't care about what you're building because it's such an early stage. No one knows whether it's going to be successful in the next 3 years, 4 years, but people try to kind of like bet on your capability as a founder. So, for example, when I raised TinyCheque, most people who invested trusted me to put that check because they know that I have a history in SaaS and I've done some good work in the industry.
Yeah,
So there's a big chance of us being successful. Whether we will be successful or not, only time will say. I can only
yeah,
like put efforts. I can go out there beyond, put in the hours, do my best in terms of strategies, everything. But whether it's gonna be as big as I want, I think only time will say, right? So no one knows how effective things would be. And even with established companies, there is no guarantee that it will survive, right?
yeah,
It can go down the drain as well. So you just have to
yeah,
keep going. You have to keep evolving as a company, whether it's an early stage or not. I think build your network because at the end of the day, relationships is what will matter. And then just be honest, be transparent about things in terms of what is working, what is not working, and how you see the future. Um, don't try to overhype things at any given point. Just be honest. Look, here is what the possibilities are. Just make sure that if you want to ride, there's a good chance of us being successful. Now, what that percentage could be, you and I don't know. But again, we see a rise in trend, and there's always a saying in angel investment or anything in the world: is trend is your friend, right? So AI is a trend right now. It's going to be for the next 5 years. So anyone who is getting into the AI industry right now, in 5 years, there's a big chance that they would actually lead on many aspects of the things.
that's a very, I think, articulate answer of how you put it. But when you talk about AI being a trend right now, what like are some future trends that you see in coming after AI? Like you, and there's a lot of like talk on LinkedIn, at least on Twitter, that I hear about SaaS era ending, like SaaS pricing changing, like from a user-based model to a usage-based model. So is that something that is happening actively right now?
No, it's too early. It's too early. Again, we're talking about dealing with almost 5 billion people on the internet today. So none of that will change. Definitely, there is going to be a small pattern here and there that will change. But then again, it's too early, right? And also it depends upon the kind of problem statement that you're trying to solve. A lot of time, a monthly subscription is also usage based, technically,
Yeah,
right? So it's like I said, it really depends upon whom you're trying to serve, what you're trying to serve. what kind of solutions that you have built up. So, for example, if you look at Neom, we have done some very creative pricing where if you don't want to use the application for the whole month and just for a one day, you can pay us 99 rupees and just use it for a single day, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a usage-based model. But then if you talk
Yeah.
about monthly subscription, we have a $20, which is like 1,700 rupee kind of like subscription as well. So it really depends upon who is going to buy. If it's a B2B, they won't even bother about $20. They would want to have, let's say, like a full-fledged enterprise solution that we are also building up. So it really depends upon who your customers are and what problem that you're trying to solve for them.
Okay. And now coming to finally TinyCheque. So, did you start it like just because you told me that a lot of VCs turned you down? Was that a push for you to start your own VC fund?
No, not
Or yeah,
No, not at all. So, while I was running Pitchground, I saw close to around $300 plus being raised by companies altogether, right? Where we were responsible for the 0 to 1 journey, and when we saw like these companies are making insane amount of money, right? We never got credited for anything, right?
yeah,
That they started the journey with us, and it was us who drove their entire 0 to 1. Because if you cannot survive 0 to 1, you cannot survive, you cannot go from 1 to 10 either, right? So your
yeah,
0 to 1 is the most critical phase, and then it's 10 to 100. It's never 1 to 10,
yeah,
right? So we were solving that 0 to 1 problem, and we saw that it's crazy with the amount of money. So even if I had like even 1% of those equity, right? I'm not
yeah,
even talking about more, just 1%, right?
yeah.
We would have been like literally talking about like what, some 3 million plus dollar exits already
Okay.
at the very least, right? At the very, very, very least, right?
Yeah,
Sorry, $30 million. Sorry, $3 million.
yeah,
Yeah. So in that particular case, just imagine like those are like money where you have helped these startups get going. So that's where I got the idea of actually building a venture studio where I'm like, no, I'm not gonna help with sales with to any company anymore. Right. I'm gonna do it for my own startups. Yeah. If you have an existing solution, let's partner up, right? I come in, so TinyCheque acts as a co-founder at that stage, right, where we take over the marketing and sales responsibilities completely, and we're like, let's work together in this case, right? If there's money to be made, there's money to be made for everyone, because at that stage, like that's a skill that I have developed, like this, you all you require is like need to master is one skill, and
yeah,
that one skill of mine is GTM for SaaS companies,
yeah,
right? I always figure out a GTM, no matter how tough the market is. I always figure out a GTM for them in terms of selling, in terms of doing things. So, for example, we are doing something very creative for Neom next week, which is we're gonna have someone who's gonna distribute flyers to lawyers outside of court,
yeah. I read
right?
your post about it.
Right.
Yeah,
So again, a very interesting GTM. GTM doesn't mean that you are doing everything online and just
yeah,
running ads and doing outreaching. You have to be creative in terms of how to reach out to your users and let them know that
yeah,
you exist. Because step one is never selling. Step one is always letting people know, hey, look, I exist. Right. So again, an interesting GTM for a platform like this. So like I said, it really depends upon all of these factors, and that's when we decided that I think it's high time we build TinyCheque. Yeah, it took some time to put up all the things together, because again, it's kind of like a very, very, very ambitious project altogether. And yeah, we launched our first project, and we have about like another additional of 9 products that are in a pipeline that's going to probably come out in this quarter completely. So, and we are aiming for at least like 3 to 5 new products every quarter after that. So yeah, interesting stuff. We have cracked building quickly. We have cracked selling quickly as well. So yeah, combination of all of these things. Now, how many projects will be a success? We don't know. Which projects will generate how much revenue? We don't know, right? Like I said, key, whenever it comes to entrepreneurship, all you can do is just use data and take right decisions based on data. Whether things will work out or not, you don't know. Sometimes when you work on emerging market, you could be a little early. So, for example, when Zapier came out, there was no need for Zapier because there were barely any SaaS companies. Now there is a
yeah,
need for it because there are thousands of SaaS companies, right?
yeah,
So sometimes you are a little early in the market, but
yeah,
what it does when you get into an emerging market, it takes some time. So, for example, a lot of people still don't know how to use something as simple as ChatGPT. I've seen people using ChatGPT as search engine, where they would enter two, three keywords and they'll expect the AI to understand everything. AI
Yeah,
doesn't understand that as of now, but eventually companies are trying to solve that as well, one by one by one, right? So
yeah.
again, it's an evolving market, and you'll see that there's going to be a bunch of new products coming in from around the world in AI, helping out users in different ways.
That sounds very cool, and I'm a big fan of this type of mentality of building a venture studio. This is a term I recently learned from you. I would not shy away from telling you that, and this is something that I have now made my own goal. That this is what I want to do. This is I want to work on many new companies at the same time with a team, of course, because I can't do everything alone, and partner up with them and take them to success as and when I can. But I just thought,
Best part about doing all of these things is that I also diversify, right? I diversify my
yeah,
portfolio because you
yeah,
can't put all your eggs in one basket, right? And
exactly,
something like this, I know for the fact if I have, let's say, 10 softwares, um, and if even two of them are a great success, right? Let's say rest of the eight, I can just sell it as it is on the IP
yeah,
basis because the tool that I created that also holds its own IP. So even if I just end up selling the entire product as it is, right, I still generate some revenue. But more importantly, even if two are successful, that two could end up generating millions and millions and millions of dollars in the next 5 years,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So now imagine you have built 20 tools, and who knows, even if you look at just 10% success rate again, it's
yeah.
still right. Probably 20% and rest of the 80%, you can maybe start understanding, hey, maybe sales is a good category that we want to be in. And future,
Yeah,
we might just stick with sales and we keep building more products around sales instead of building other
yeah,
categories, right? So again, once
yeah,
you understand and get a lot more data, you can play around with all of these things. And again, like I said, the
yeah,
best is you really, really diversify your portfolio,
yeah,
where I no longer need to invest in SaaS companies anymore, right?
yeah.
So I
I completely
think that's
agree.
where the fun is.
Yeah. But just on top of my mind, like when you were talking about getting guy to like send out flyers outside of court, I thought of a guerrilla tactic myself for your Neon.ai, and you can tell me if you would think that would work or not. So I like Coat in itself is a very paper heavy and paper centric business. So what if you get those like bundles of paper with your watermark on it, not for the ones that are you to be used with for affidavits because those are stamp papers and sold separately. But what if you get the plain paper for the filing purpose and stuff, and you just have a powered like paper by Niyam.ai printed in the bottom where it doesn't
I
have.
think right now, it's too early to focus on all of those things because right now there's still a lot of data that we need to train upon. There's still a lot of things, other things that we need to train upon. And more importantly, we are focusing on some of the features and solutions that our users have requested for. So like I said, the opportunity is pretty crazy. A lot of things can be built up. But then again, we want to take a more of a product-led growth approach. So generally, product-led growth approach is where you take feedback, you work on the product, you release it. You take the feedback, you work on the product, you release it, right? This approach takes a lot of
Yeah,
time, but your chances of being successful is a lot higher. And at the same time, it reduces your development cost, but it doesn't bring you immediate revenue, right?
yeah,
Because that feedback loop is always going to exist. But at the same time, you don't end up building anything that's unnecessary as well. You only build
yeah.
features, solutions that you know for the fact is going to sell.
I completely agree. And I think that is how Notion was also built using Reddit as a feedback loop for
Yeah,
the early
absolutely.
users.
That's why it took them 10 years.
Yeah, yeah. And like, I think Notion is a great tool. Like, it's my everyday go-to tool for everything because it has everything in one place. Like, I don't have to use Google Docs for docs and Google Sheets for tables and this and that. I can use everything in one place and more efficiently. So, and I love Notion on my end. But having said that, like, what is the average ticket size at TinyCheques that you invest in startups, and how much percentage do you like take as a co-founder of these
So
partnered up ventures?
again, it depends because we at TinyCheck we have molded the definition of venture studio a bit because again there is no hard rule that you need to do things in
Yeah.
certain, right? So what we do is we work on two different verticals. The first vertical is where we build our own products, right?
Okay.
So out of the 9 products that are going to come out in this quarter, about 5 odd products would be completely built and owned 100% by TinyCheck, kind of like how
Okay.
typical SaaS company would work. So we have added that as well so that we do not have dependency on anyone, right? So again, diversifying and safeguarding my investors fund is
Yeah.
very important for me,
So you
right?
bought them off of the founders.
No, we build it. Simple.
Okay.
When we can build it at 1/10 of a cost, and we already know how to
Yeah.
distribute, right? So why to like go and acquire anyone at any given point, right? So in this particular case, that's the first vertical that we work at, and the second vertical that we work at is where we would work with a certain company, and we do not work with any company for less than 50%.
For less than 50%.
Yeah, it's an equal partnership.
Okay. Okay. And
Yeah.
how big is TinyCheque's like pool of funds? Like if that's a
I,
public number?
I cannot. It's not a public number as of now.
Okay, okay. I don't know. I just see,
We
keep seeing
still
these
we still
numbers
like
around. I thought it's public.
Yeah, we're still like continuously raising at the moment. So
Okay.
eventually, like it will hit the PR eventually someday. But
Right.
right now we're still trying to like keep a lot of things, especially these data under stealth because we don't want too much attention at this point of
Okay.
stage. So that's why we are not creating like too much buzz around it at the moment because the moment you try to create more buzz, it attracts unwanted competition for no reason. So we want to make
Okay.
sure we create buzz at the stage where now it becomes very difficult for any new entry to come in, and that becomes
Got
a
it.
great moat, right? Because if we have so many products already and we have a moat over there, then it becomes very difficult for someone else to really sort of come in and work on things, right? So that gives you a far ahead that keeps you like far ahead in terms of any future competition as well. So a lot of thought process went into before, and this is why you probably might have seen that the only thing I did was I announced it on my LinkedIn. That's it.
Yeah.
My Twitter, but I have not done any PR. Plus, at the same time, it's a waste of money. At the same time, I would have probably burned like 4 or 5 lakh rupees doing a PR for what, right? Like it would have not led to
Yeah.
anything. You do
Yeah.
PR when you know for the fact that okay, you have products, you have things, and that would also lead to an opportunity for your
Yeah.
products to be discovered by the users, and then they can come and
Yeah.
sign, right? That's
Yeah.
when if you are spending 3 4 lakh rupees on PR, you know that okay, it can generate 3 4 lakhs rupees of revenue. So
Yeah.
you like a net zero burn at that stage. So again, even though we have raised, I still act and operate as a bootstrap founder.
That's a, I think, a great mindset to have because it just keeps you mindful of your expenses and costs because you can't control anything outside of your cost, right? Cost is
No,
one thing that you can like 100% have a control of and you can optimize for that. And
yeah.
but having said that, like we hear a lot of chatter around like what you just touched upon as well, but there's a lot of competition in the VC industry. Like, but I as an outsider don't, and I've never raised funds for myself, so I don't know how things work as well. So do you mean by competition? Like how can someone compete with money being money? Like money is competing with money. Like what is the competition there? Like getting more deals, but everyone can't afford all the deals because they say no to some deals, so that opens the room for some other VCs also. But what is the competition?
So competition is always fierce, right? So for example, let's say that what I'm trying to do right now, I'm trying to build a very unique thesis out of India. Like no one has done this in the past, and there are hardly few people who are very credible who can actually pull this off, something like this, right? Because you need to understand funds, you need to understand finances, you need to understand distribution, you need to understand tech,
Yeah,
you need to understand how to build tech, you need to understand how to combine all of these things together. You need to understand how to market 20, 30 products at the same time
yeah,
with a limited team. You need to understand product-led growth. There's a lot of
yeah,
understanding that needs to be done. So unless and until you have been doing all of these things for the last 10, 15 years, it's impossible to build something like this, right? And that gives us a great moat right now at the moment that because I've run Pitchground, I've pushed 10, 20 products all at the same time, right? In a very
yeah,
product growth approach, I know how to pull off all of these things, right? So
yeah,
that is the reason why like our thesis is so very unique in terms of what is out there. And you will see a lot of VC slowly and steadily turning into a venture studio because those days are really gone where VCs can typically put a check, they take 2%. There's a very high risk and failure in startups. The returns are not that great. Versus when you actually build a venture studio, the returns are a lot higher, right? Because the equity that you own, even if it's
yeah,
your own product, right? If it's 100% fantastic, right? If it's half of it, it's still fantastic, right?
Yeah.
So at that stage, the possibility of returns and the kind of returns that you can make is way higher, right? Way higher at that stage. And this is why you will slowly and slowly see like a lot of VCs. That's what I predict in next 5 to 10 years in the VC world, because most of the like investors with check will say that, hey, well, all you're doing is just putting a check, my check into something else, right, as a fund. But I don't see you
Right.
effectively doing anything or managing anything, because a lot of VCs generally, like, some are helpful, some are not that helpful, right? And this is where things become very different, because now if you're actively involved, you know what's going on in the business, and more importantly, you will only be able to build a venture studio if you have a very thorough knowledge,
Yeah.
right? So if I were to, let's say, build a if I want to become a VC today, if I do anything outside of SaaS, there's a big chance I will fail very miserably,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But if I am a VC in, and if I build, let's say, a fund of 50 100 crores, I raise those capital as a VC, and if I build a fund around it, there's a big chance that I might be able to pull in some good money, but more importantly, I might be able to do some returns, give some good returns as well, right?
Yeah.
But then again, what happens to the founders? What happens to the team? Now, there is no visibility in any of these things. Now I have a hands-on, right? So here I am acting as a founder, but also as a VC in some of the unique way.
Yeah.
Effectively do things in a creative way, but more importantly, you also hedge things in a way where we are building our own tools. So we have 100% revenue coming in from there as well. So
Yeah.
this is a very unique model, which is being adopted in US and a lot of other countries. In SaaS, again, I saw the trends, and as I told you, I catch the trends very early, right?
Yeah.
Be it any business model, I try to stay ahead of the game, because by the time most people come in, I look for an exit by
Yeah,
then.
makes sense. Makes sense. And that's very commendable to be able to do that so consistently and over again in different fields also, like not in the same business itself. But having said that, I think that what you're chasing right now with the venture studio shift of VC angle, I think it's very similar to what McDonald's did from switching to a fast food chain to a real estate company. And I think it's the largest real estate company in the world. Uh, McDonald's as a corporation. And to control ops, they were not able to control ops, right? And they needed to own the real estate so that they can hold people who own the franchise to terminate their like contract if they're not able to hold certain quality checks. And I think that is what changed their game forever. And I think that is the shift that you are bringing in, from shifting from fast food to real estate and having more control over the quality. And I think that just makes logical sense. That's intuitively true. And it doesn't get simpler than that. So I see a lot of value in it. And I think if you succeed in like a startup or two in your venture studio, I think a lot of people start following. And then that is where I can see the competition coming in after you. That take away, isn't it? Yeah, now we need to do it. Like hire 10 people and just start building something of your own. But I completely second that. But but I think that is pretty much it from my end, because you explained everything so thoroughly, and I don't have any more doubts left. If I do, I will probably hit you up again. but
No, no worries.
but why? Like one question, just out of curiosity, I want to ask you: like, if you have been financially free for so long, why do you care? Why do you care to build so much, like over and over again? And you fail, and then you iterate, and you succeed, or you fail and you
Because
iterate.
money is not my motivation, right? Like, problem
Yeah,
solving is what motivates me, right? I could have zero money in the bank today, and I could restart, and I could still be successful, I would say, right? So success, I've always seen success is a formula, but it's also a mindset. If your
yeah,
mindset is to just chase money, chances of you being successful is very less. But if your mindset is always about solving problem and bringing value in other people's life, you will make money, right? I always say this, that the most richest people in the world have delivered the maximum value in the world, right?
yeah,
Your wealth is equivalent to the amount of value you have created for someone else. It's
yeah.
as simple as that.
Yeah, I completely agree, and that's a very beautiful thought. And I hope that you achieve whatever you want to achieve with TinyCheque, and I hope that we're able to host you again and celebrate your success together as your early cheerleader. And
Thank you so much.
I think, thank you so much for your time. And is there anything that you would like to say to the audience at the end?
I think whatever you want to do, just do it from your heart and put in your entire heart and soul. And more importantly, just focus on your customer, because that's one thing that I've realized over years and years and years again, that instead of chasing growth, just retain your customers, and that is going to lead to growth. Right. Anything that you do, just put in a lot of heart, soul. Don't do it because you want to do it. Do it because you feel like doing it, right?
Yeah,
And as long as you do it, I think just remain passionate about things, and yeah, understand data, all of these things. And I think as long as you remain focused, then I think you'll pretty much achieve everything that you want in your life.
that's beautiful. I think that's a good note to end the podcast episode on, and I'll stop the recording there.